pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Lieutenant.
Water tower, fly!
Fire downside of speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks, you'll know how this goes. John Galloway with NASASpaceflight here. We start off the stream. Let me know if you can hear me right now. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Am I pretty? Tell me I'm pretty. Somebody, please. We've got another NASA Spaceflight live for you here this afternoon over on YouTube and Twitch today. But a couple of cool things to talk about. I'm going to get some chat here. 5x5. That looks good, good. No echoes or anything like that. Again, y'all, you're part of our production team. So when we start these things, we don't have like a cast of 50 people running production and AV producer, all the stuff that happens. We don't have that. You're on our production team. So if you're getting an echo or something like that, let me know, because I'm the person who has to fix it and I need to know. Anyways, y'all know how it goes. Y'all know how it goes. You can hear and see you. All right, good deal. All clear, no echoes. So let me get this chat over here on the screen, because as you know, we do a live show here with NASA Spaceflight live. It's like in the title, live. And if you have questions for us over the course of the show, tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat. We've got this handy dandy interface that will actually store your questions over on the side. As we get time, we'll go through them. We'll try to answer them. We can never answer all the questions. There's no way we ever get to all the questions, but we try. We really do try to get to as many questions as we can. So just be patient with us. Again, tag us at NASA Spaceflight. I'm going to be reading Twitch chat as well. So thank you all. You can tag me however you want over there, and I'll get some questions from there as well. Also, we're able to do these shows because of the super chats and subs and people that like and subscribe and all those things. That's why we keep showing up here every Saturday. It's not like we lost some sort of terrible live streaming bet that means we have to do this. We show up because y'all show up. So thank you so much for the support that allows us to do this. If you do something like a super chat, channel membership, sub on Twitch, whatever it is, that goes into a queue as well, and we'll yell that out on occasion. Maybe not in real time if you're used to that, but we will get to that. Trust me. Trust me, trust me. So if everything's good to go here, I don't think there's anything else we've missed. That all looks good. You can hear what we're saying. All right. Cool. So let's top over. What are we talking today? We've got Starship SN6 ready to test. That's happening, plus other news from Starship and videos. We've got the SLS Green Run coming up as well, and then also mysterious flight of Stargazer. So with us today, let's get into our other subject matter experts on either side of me. Over on this side, I've got Jack Beyer. How are you doing, Jack?
Hey, how's it going? Doing good. Ready to talk about some spooky Stargazer stuff.
Spooky Stargazer stuff. All right. And Jack's audio good there? Y'all let me know that Jack's good. On the other side here, we've got, for the first time ever on NASA Spaceflight Live, Philip Sloss. Philip, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Hanging in there. You know, I'm talking as I do, and Jack's over there with his mission patches, and you're over here with your shelves behind you, and I think we're ready to do this. Y'all ready to go?
Sure.
All right. Jack, you good?
No, I'm not. Abort.
No. All right.
Abort.
Shut it down.
Abort.
I'm just abort the stream. I'm turning it all off.
All right. That was good, guys. Thanks.
All right, good show. Thanks for joining NASA Spaceflight Live here today. No, folks, we've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Again, live show. We're doing it live. If you have questions for us, tag us. We'll see if we can't get over to it, but we're going to hop right in to our topics for today, starting with this mysterious Stargazer launch. Jack, what was going on with Stargazer out there in your neck of the woods?
Well, let me just tamp some expectations down right off the bat. We don't think it was a launch. At least we're pretty sure it wasn't a launch. There was no indication that they launched anything. But let's start back at the beginning. What is Stargazer? There's probably a lot of people that are watching the stream that hear the name Stargazer and they have no idea what we're talking about. So that you're looking at right now is Stargazer. It is a plane. Specifically, it is the last flying Lockheed Martin L-1011 TriStar. So this is a plane that was built in the 60s and 70s, I believe. And it was one of the first wide-body airliners, and it was basically ahead of its time and very advanced for its time. But due to a variety of factors, market forces, issues with the engine supplier, Rolls-Royce, getting them engines on time, the TriStar ended up not being a commercial success. And in fact, I think it nearly bankrupted Lockheed. Notice how Lockheed doesn't do commercial airliners anymore, and it's all military stuff. So yeah, that's in part because of what happened with the L-1011 airliner. I think they built about 250 of them, and Stargazer is the final flying one. So here you can see Stargazer was originally an Air Canada jet, and it first flew in 1974. So it's an old bird, and it's remarkable that it's still flying, and that's part of the reason why we care, at least why I care, about what it's up to, because it's an incredibly old and historic aircraft, just from a civilian aircraft point of view. But then in 1992, it transitioned from an Air Canada aircraft. Orbital Sciences Corporation purchased it and modified it to launch the Pegasus rocket. So here, there you can see it in Orbital Sciences livery, which I think is probably my favorite of any of the iterations of its paint jobs, which you will be seeing here shortly. So what is Pegasus? Pegasus is a small sat rocket launcher. It is capable of carrying small payloads into 400, or it's capable of carrying small payloads up to like 450 pounds or so into low Earth orbit. So it's a rocket launching plane. I mean, what's not to like about that? So Pegasus has launched 44 total times, and there you can see Pegasus that's at Vandenberg. That's actually the Icon launch. The most recent Pegasus launch was scrubbed a number of times for a variety of reasons, but I actually, before several of those scrubs, had the privilege to go out and photograph Stargazer with the rocket attached, which is quite a sight. And you can see Pegasus, that rocket has a very large horizontal wing up top. That's actually, fun fact, designed and built by Scaled Composites. They just have their hands in everything. So that's Pegasus. That's Stargazer. Who, big whoop. Who cares? Why are we talking about this? There, well, many reasons why we're talking about this. First off, air launch is exciting. I mean, here we go. We are about to watch an example of a Pegasus launch, and I mean, you can. I know a lot of times people will come out of the woodwork and and sort of shake their fist like, "Oh, air launch doesn't make sense for a variety of reasons, or this reason or that reason." I like air launch. I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to go do a cost benefit analysis or what have you. I'm not a rocket scientist, but strictly from the point of view of someone who likes to photograph and see cool things, come on, look at that. So that is a little bit of background. That's Stargazer. That's Pegasus. That's why we care. What it is up to. It's remarkable that it's even still flying. In fact, at $40 million a flight, Pegasus is not super cost competitive with Falcon 9 and other rockets. So it's tough. It's like, for a long time, every time I go to Mojave, which is where it's based out of, you see Stargazer sort of sitting on the side of the runway, just kind of sitting there with covers on the engines and covers on the windshields, and you're just like, come on, man, do something cool. Like, I know you can do cool stuff. Do something cool. So it's nice to see potentially what we have seen, which I will get to shortly. A little bit of history more first. Here's a Twilight launch. So I just wanted to point this one out because a lot of times when we think about Twilight launches, we think about Falcon 9. And here's a Twilight launch off the coast of California, I think back in 1999. And yeah, I mean, what's not to love about that? It's an air launch, long exposure Twilight launch. I mean, that is an extremely unique streak shot that I don't think I've seen anything like before or since. Okay, so where are we going with this? Stargazer was first owned by, like I said, Orbital Sciences. Orbital Sciences merged with a company called Allegiant Tech Systems and formed Orbital ATK. You can see the Orbital ATK livery right there, also looking fine. Although I think I prefer the Orbital Sciences livery more. After that, Orbital ATK merged with, or was purchased by, Northrop Grumman. So then now you can see it in the Northrop Grumman livery at Mojave, I think earlier this year or late last year. So it's owned by Northrop Grumman. It's a Lockheed manufactured airliner, which I find a hilarious quirk. It has launched a bunch of missions, and then hasn't really had any missions lately for a period of time. And there are no upcoming missions for Pegasus. There's no payloads booked on it, and so the question has been sort of out there: what is it going to be used for? Is it going to be retired? What happens when it gets retired? Question marks. There's question marks around the fate and current use of Stargazer. Well, cut to lately. Oh, thank you. This picture reminds me. So as part of Stargazer's activities, it has done other things besides launching Pegasus rockets. Its capability as a commercial carrier vehicle has enabled it to do things like this X-34 captive carry testing campaign. So we know Stargazer can do things other than launch Pegasus. We know there are no upcoming Pegasus launches, and we know that Stargazer normally operates out of Mojave Air and Spaceport for check flights and for standard like currency flights. So recently, we have seen Stargazer start to start to fly without filing flight plans. So it'll take off without a destination filed and fly to somewhere like Edwards Air Force Base. And that's odd. What is it doing at Edwards Air Force Base? And then, of course, what we're all talking about, the mysterious flight. August 12th, it takes off. And this isn't the only mysterious flight, mind you. But specifically, this one was extremely interesting for a variety of reasons. It took off from Edwards Air Force Base on August 12th in the early morning hours before sunrise. So if I was working at Edwards Air Force Base and I had a secret thing attached to a plane that was taking off, you'd launch it at night. I mean, you take off at night so people can't get a good look or a good photo at it. So took off at night before sunrise, flew out over the Pacific Test Range, and began flying in a racetrack pattern. And if you don't know what's up with that racetrack pattern, that is what rocket launching aircraft do when they are in the sequence. So orbital or Virgin Orbit's Cosmic Girl did a similar racetrack pattern. We've seen the same racetrack pattern from Stargazer ahead of its launches and during its launches. So this is indicative of launch activity. And there were no NOTAMs, there were no notice to mariners. So we don't think it was necessarily launch activities. It was probably more like a captive carry of some sort of vehicle. But yeah, that is essentially what Stargazer is up to right now and why we are so tantalized by what it is doing. Good chance that it is some sort of hypersonic test, whether it is a hypersonic boost glide vehicle or some sort of powered vehicle. We really don't know, but this link here that Das is showing illustrates that we've really, as a military industrial complex, stomped the gas on hypersonics testing. And the mysterious activities of Stargazer of late seem to portend something going on in that area. And Edwards Air Force Base is the center of the flight test world. So much gets tested right there, and so much in California is basically military testing grounds. California, Nevada, the American West is hugely owned and tested over by the American military. So that's what Stargazer has been up to. And I don't know, has anyone caught any cool Stargazer questions coming through?
Probably so, Jack. I was going to ask really quickly, as I float here with no background on my scene, apparently. Didn't check this scene out, looks like. But anyways, whatever. That's better. All right, I'm back.
Tony Jebson asking if the racetrack gives any clues to possible orbits. I think it does, but I'm not a rocket scientist. You might have more insight on that than I do, Das. But what were you going to say before I just so casually interrupted you?
Oh no, that's fine. I mean the orbit from that is flying over the national park out there. It didn't go too far out to sea, but it's got a little bit of an inclination on that, assuming that north is straight up on this map. But I don't know what I would be able to tell you. Like if they were to do a launch, they probably would launch on the bottom part of this racetrack away as opposed to above where they're coming back to land. So were they testing something out on that side? They sort of entered the racetrack on the southern part of the end and they did that loop back around. I don't know.
What that says to me is what is it pointing at right now in that image? It's pointing at the Kwajalein Atoll and Pacific Test Range, I believe. So so if you're going to fire a missile out into the middle of the ocean to test it, I mean, I believe that is the direction that you would want to set up. It's definitely not a polar launch. I mean, a polar launch would be looking, more of a north-south type of racetrack there. So it looks more like a retro. Exactly, Philip. It looks like a retrograde type of trajectory there. So whether that's a suborbital or orbital intention there, we obviously can't tell. But really interesting to see that Stargazer, a plane from 1974, still has a purpose in 2020, and a purpose that very well could be on the bleeding edge of technology.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask, I mean, we talked about this and it's hypersonic testing accelerates, but what does that even mean, Jack? Like hypersonic testing, it's better than supersonic, I would guess. What are we doing with hypersonics?
Well, it's the hot new thing in military industrial, procurement right now is what's better than supersonic, what's better than stealth? It's hypersonic. It goes so fast that the enemy doesn't even have a chance to react. It gets there, and before you know it, it's already there. So there are a variety of hypersonic vehicles, both in the public realm and I'm sure in the classified realm, that are being funded to a are being well funded right now. And I think part of that is in response to both Russia and China lately have been touting their own advancements in hypersonic weapons development. And so there's sort of been almost an arms race, if you will, set up around hypersonics. And every country, every major power is trying to show, hey, this is a playing field that we have skin in the game on, or I don't know, whatever appropriate words. I'm running out of steam here, Das. Ask me a different
Yeah.
question.
No, that's okay. Jack, when you stop your explanation, I'll automatically take over and go to the next thing. Like, you don't have to keep talking. I got your back, dude. And I like holding up we have another mug here. Nice, Jack. So it's interesting. I mean, it's originally a commercial airliner, like you were saying, and then it got all sorts of different missions, I guess, over the times. Multiple companies sort of moving it around, and it's not done yet. It still has the, I guess, the equipment, the build to carry stuff. Maybe it's not carrying a lot of the air launch rockets anymore to take payloads someplace, but it still has something to do. And I know, Jack, I know that you're gonna. Didn't you try to catch it a couple times when it was taking off or landing to see what was on it?
Oh yeah, that's the corollary to the story is I was there.
Yeah,
I was
you
at
were
Edward, I
there.
was at Edwards Air Force Base, not on base property, obviously, but I was there stalking the plane. And I got there, I think at like 5:20, 5:30 in the morning, thinking surely they're going to take off with at least a little bit of daylight, because if they're testing something, they're going to want to be able to see
Yep.
what they're doing. Maybe if there's a chase plane of some kind, chase plane's going to want to be able to, have eyes on the vehicle as it takes off. Well, turns out I get to the spot that I, was going to try shooting from, and that's the other thing is even if I had made it on time, I haven't successfully ever shot something from Edwards before. It's just not an easy place to shoot aircraft. So
Right.
all of these shots that you're seeing here, these are from Mojave, and Mojave is
Mojave.
a normal airport, and it's a lot of stuff gets tested there. It's interesting in its own right, but it's not like Edwards. So I was already kind of a wild goose chase. Like, will I even be able to see anything if I go? And I went and I showed up. Like I said, I got there around 5:20, 5:30. Checked flight aware. It was already in the air out over the Pacific. So it took off, I think, like right at 5. So
Ah.
is
Did
what
you
it
wait?
is.
Did you wait around for it to come back, or did you just?
No, I
Yeah.
should have. I really, really should have, because it did come back during the day. I'm not sure if anyone had eyes on it when it did come back, and I'm not sure if that would have even been possible the way that it came in and landed. I don't know if
Flies in.
they
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they flew in a deliberate way and, descended over a test range so that they couldn't be seen. But I wish I had stayed out to shoot it, but I had already been up all night, literally all night, shooting meteors out of the Salton
Perseids.
Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I drove from the Salton Sea to Edwards Air Force Base, which was like a 3.5 hour drive in the middle of the night, because I thought this might happen, and I missed it. So, no pain, no gain. And instead, I got to do that awesome 6 hour or 8 hour or whatever
It's so.
stream of SN6 getting lifted. So if you happen
Yep.
to watch the SN6 stream where it gets lifted onto the launch mount and you're like, why is he so crazy right now? That's probably because I hadn't slept. So that's the full backstory on that. I did try to get a picture so that we could have something to look at while we talked about it, but
Right.
no luck, no joy, as they say. But I'll keep trying. Rest assured.
It's so many of the things that we cover that way when there's not an official schedule, there's not a media release, all that sort of stuff. And it's sort of just show up based on the information you have and wait. Are they going to do a static fire at Boca Chica? Are they going to do this test with the Stargazer? What are they going to do when they're not announcing what's going on? A lot of our jobs are just to hurry up and wait for it. So we appreciate you going out there and trying to catch it. I'm sure we'll get it at some point in the future and see what they're doing. But
Oh, you know
again,
it.
y'all,
That kind of
go
stuff
ahead.
is my favorite thing to do, is just go hunt out, random stuff that we don't have. It's all fun and games to shoot a rocket launch when you know when the window is and when the liftoff is, but
Yep.
the real hunt is when you have no idea what's going to happen.
That's like easy mode. There's a T-0, like when it's gonna go, and then it's like, oh no, it's a scrub. That's terrible. Imagine sitting out there for 4 hours with no T-0. You don't even know if it's gonna go or not. A lot of
Exactly.
the tests that happen from Vandenberg are that way, right? The missile tests are the same sort of deal. Like
Yep.
maybe they'll be tonight. They said something about it, but we don't know exactly when. So you're just sitting there waiting for it to go. Anyways, speaking of things that we do know when they're going to go, do we get any other questions on that? I guess. Let's see. How much time? I mean, we said
Pink
we could just spend
Mouse.
as much time. Yeah, go ahead.
Pink Mouse asking if it was some sort of comms test like they just did with the AGM 183. AGM 183 is one of those hypersonic vehicles or missiles that is being currently developed and tested. So that is entirely plausible that it could be a test of something like that. Even maybe specifically that. It's a very good supposition there. So good
Gotcha.
question, Pink Mouse.
You want to speed run a couple of these other questions real quick? Like Trevor
Yeah,
asked.
let me get the.
Oh,
Go for
yeah,
it.
I'll forward them to you, Jack. Trevor asked if it launches outside the U.S. airspace, what permits do they need to launch? Like, is there a big permitting thing? It's sort of like, well, you don't really need a permit, but when you come back to our airspace, you better have played by the rules, right?
Yeah, I think that's like I know the FAA probably wouldn't be too happy if you just did something like that without even internationally or not. Although I'm not sure. I'm not a pilot.
Yeah, gotcha. Can Stargazer send payloads to a lunar orbit, like out to the moon? Have we ever had a Stargazer payload that goes beyond Leo, or?
Oh man, now I'm getting you guys put me on the spot. I don't know if
That's
it has or
okay.
not. That's a really good question.
Gotcha. Do you know what altitude in meters the Stargazer deploys Pegasus? Does it use like normal commercial altitudes, 35,000 feet?
I think typically 40K, although I have to just Google it because I don't, we're a
Yeah,
news
fair
org and I
enough.
don't want to give you incorrect information.
I think over here, this unknown, this wasn't a launch, right? We don't know exactly what this was, but this one it was flying at 31,600 at 433 miles per hour. So that's around normal commercial
It
altitude out there,
It did. So it set up in the racetrack at 25,000, and then it
right?
climbed to 40, and then it went back down to 25, and I think it climbed again. But either way, it went up to 40. And I'm looking at Wikipedia now just to verify my insane rambling. And
Sure.
yeah, Pegasus is released from the carrier aircraft at approximately 40K.
But just
So
so that's a little bit higher than commercial, right?
yeah, so I did see a lot of people saying, why not? This could have just been a check flight or some sort of test or practice for the crew or check of the Stargazer itself, which is possible. I don't want to exclude that from the realm of possibility. There could have been nothing interesting attached to this thing at all. But why take off before sunrise? Why not take off from Mojave? Why take off from Edwards? Because I've seen them do check flights from Mojave plenty of times. So the
Right.
fact that they took off from Edwards, the fact that they took off before sunrise, and the fact that there was no flight plan filed. They normally file a flight plan. Although
It-
yeah, I'm incorrect on that one. I think they did file one for this one. They flew back to NTD, but they actually ended up flying back to Edwards. So either way, interesting things going on with Stargazer.
Interesting, weird things going on with Stargazer. Gotcha. Well, I'm sure we'll keep an eye on Stargazer, and if there's any more news, somebody officially announced something, somebody gets a picture of something wacky slung underneath the belly of it, like, what the heck is that hypersonic looking thing? I'm sure we'll talk about it some more, right, Jack?
Yeah, and I just selfishly want to know what its fate is because up until all of this interesting activity, I honestly and truly thought it was about to be retired. I thought surely they're going to take it. They're going to pull the engines off. They're going to put it hopefully somewhere on display. I really hope Northrop Grumman, if you are listening to me, Stargazer is a piece of space history and deserves a spot on display either at Mojave Spaceport or over by the shuttle carrier aircraft over by Blackbird Air Park. Somewhere in Antelope Valley, it deserves a place of honor. Please, whenever its time has come, hopefully not soon, put it somewhere cool.
Yeah, please don't
How about
tear it
the
apart.
Smithsonian?
Yeah, the Smithsonian. There you go. Please don't put it in a boneyard out in the desert somewhere. Like, put it someplace where people can see it and know what Stargazer did. I like it, Jack. I like it.
And really
So,
quick,
oh, sure, go ahead.
Ron Smith with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Ron.
Oh,
And Ron,
nice.
very good point. They say it's important to note that Pegasus was the first privately funded and developed rocket to reach orbit. So pretty nifty thing. And Orbital Sciences Corporation, they accomplished something that we now really appreciate that SpaceX is doing, and they did it first. So neat.
Yeah, gotcha. Hey, I'm going to catch up on a couple others really quickly here. Multi Space Industries, thanks for the super chat there. After Monday's inland hurricane, that's what's going on out in Iowa, Ohio. It was Iowa, wasn't it? I'm very glad to have both Power and the Water Tower show back. Nice, the Water Tower show. Be sure to check out the Red Cross Disaster Fund for the Iowans. There you go. Thanks. Less lucky than me or Tim Dodd. There you go. So Moldy Space Entries, thank you for that. Definitely what happened out there in Iowa with the derecho, I think it was, right? The big storm system that came through and caused a ton of damage. Something to be thinking of. So thoughts going out to there and everybody affected by that. Thank you so much for saying that. And Mika, aloha, Saturday Highlight Live. Howdy, guys. How's it going? We're doing just fine, Mika. Thank you very much for the support and showing up. And then over here as well, Iron Catastrophe, how you doing? Long time no see. Appreciate you stopping in. Synthetic Mouse as well. Striders, Orlowski, Killpond, Banana. Quite a few people showing up over on my side of things. So good to see y'all again. Y'all know how it goes with our NASA Spaceflight live shows here. Speaking of that, we do have the next thing on the list here. Philip's got this one. Philip, everybody's favorite orange rocket, SLS in a green run. What's going on with this green run here?
Well, they just finished. I guess it was last week. They just finished the fourth of 8 tests, and they've been reviewing the data, and they are going to do they're supposed to start the next test case here in the next week, and they're hoping that they can finish that by the end of the month. That's test case 5. What you're looking here at is you can see the orange rocket there in the upper left. This is the B test stand at Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. It's a dual position stage on the left test position and a single engine test position on the right. That's the B1 position. And so the stage has been there since January, and these pictures, these stills we just got about a month ago. And of course, all of the NASA centers are still in stage 3, so it takes a little bit of paperwork to get somebody out there to take pictures and then get them processed. So, but you can see the core stage. That's the first and only working core stage in the SLS program on the left there. And so you can see several of the different platform levels there in the stand, and the engines, of course, are kind of hidden down below in the gray area. That's I believe it's called the battleship part of the stand. So what I
Is
thought
my
I'd talk
illustration
about
okay?
is,
My
I'm sorry, what's that?
illustration there? Does that look
Yes,
right?
right.
Okay. Go
So
ahead, Philip.
what I thought I'd talk about is a little bit more about the story that we published on Monday, which is that we got way back in February, which seems like a long time ago now. We got a little bit of an early preview of the green run, and the the core of the green run test, even though they're going to be testing pretty much all year. With they had a 2-month break due to the coronavirus, is a 10-minute terminal countdown sequence, and then an 8-minute firing of all 4 engines in the stage. And what you're looking at here is an acoustic ring that's going to provide sound suppression during the 8-minute firing. And so the engines will fire straight down through these jets that are basically perpendicular to the engines firing. And the purpose of that would be the acoustics from the engines will go down into the flame bucket that you're seeing here and bounce off of the flame bucket, and that water is kind of like a flat plate of water. It will help muffle the sound waves coming back up and rebounding onto the vehicle. So normally, after less than 10 seconds, the vehicle is lifting off and clearing the launch facility. So you'll have water that you can see below the acoustic ring here, that yellow, and you can see some of the streams here. That's the flame bucket water deluge, which will also be running in parallel with the acoustic ring. This is a test that was performed back in May of 2018. And so they will be using a lot of water, and those are actually going to be critical to the firing itself. Those will essentially be required to continuously provide sound suppression and the flame bucket deluge while the engines are firing. And so even though the test is to get all of this design verification data for the stage, the test down still plays a critical role in this, in that uh, this this water supply has to run for the entire time the engines are running. So if they had an issue with the water supply, they would have to cut the test off. So um, the story that we did on Monday was talking about the main part uh, of the test, which is a 10-minute terminal countdown and an 8-minute firing. And so the terminal countdown sequence for the green run is obviously only focused on the core stage, and it starts at 10 minutes and counting. And it's broken up into 3 parts. There's a and for people who are familiar with the shuttle and shuttle launch countdown, it has a very similar set of um, phases and milestones that occur. Obviously, the core stage is built around the same engine. In this case, 4 instead of 3. So the first part of the terminal count runs from T minus 10 minutes down to T minus 6 minutes. And they will run through, in the green run, they will run through this sequence 3 times. The first time will be in test case 6, which will be unfueled. The second time will be a fueled wet dress rehearsal, that's test case 7. And then the hot fire will be test case 8. In the uh, wet dress, test case 7, they have a design verification objective where they will sit in a hold somewhere in between 10 and 6 for 2 hours, similar to what they would do if they were out on the pad and they were waiting for weather or some other, a boat in the box aircraft. They're going to typically have 2-hour launch windows on a given launch day, and they want to demonstrate that the stage meets the design requirements, that it can sit in that configuration for 2 hours. Once you get inside of 6 minutes, then you start doing things that are time limited. And these are typical things that any rocket stage is going to be doing as it gets prepped for ignition and liftoff. They'll start pressurizing the tanks. At 4 minutes, they will start the auxiliary power units for the core stage, and these are modified shuttle auxiliary power units. So they no longer have a hydrazine fuel system or fuel supply. They're actually started from a ground helium spin start system that they have both furnished at Stennis and at Kennedy. And once the APUs are up and running at around 3 minutes, you'll have the typical final purge sequence of all 4 engines. That's the purge sequence 4. And then at 2.5 minutes before T0, you'll get an engine gimbal profile. They'll run the engines just to make sure that the hydraulic systems are able to command the engines to move, and it'll just be a can profile, and very similar to what was seen during a shuttle. And these will all probably be terminal countdown sequence or milestones. We're still talking to NASA and Boeing about these things to get more details on them. And we also, again, we talked about this mostly back in February. So things could have changed again, since this is the first time they'll be running through these sequences. So they may end up feeding back things into it after they run through it to the first couple of times. The final point in the countdown where they can hold and wait is at 90 seconds. And so somewhere between T minus 6 minutes and T minus 90 seconds, they will do another demonstration, a design verification demonstration. The vehicle's designed to be able to hold for up to 3 minutes in that configuration where you have tanks pressurized, APUs running, engine purges going. So that will be another thing that they test in the wet dress rehearsal, and then for the hot fire test, they would just, I assume, would just proceed down through the count as assuming everything's working correctly. After they get past 90 seconds, that's the point where the stage switches to internal power. And in contrast to the shuttle, which used fuel cells, which had up to a couple of weeks worth of internal power supply, the batteries are very time limited. This is much more like a typical rocket stage. There are four batteries in the inner tank of a core stage, and once those are being topped off right up until the point where they switch the stage to internal power. Once they go past 90 seconds, then if there's a problem, they'll have to stop and recycle. Um, the final major countdown milestone on the ground side is to hand off to the core stage computers. That will occur at 30 seconds prior to T0. Now, the engines start about 6 seconds before T0. But the core stage computer system is a brand new set of computers and a new software build, and those will also be getting their first major integrated test uh, um, in these last two major tests, the wet dress and the hot fire. And so the So once the flight computers in the core stage take over, they'll continue. They will continue to monitor the test commit criteria, assuming everything is good. The ground computers, it's called the stage controller. Very similar to shuttle. They will have to give a go for main engine start at 10 seconds, assuming they get that from the ground side. The engines will start again, very similar to shuttle. You'll have that approximately 120-second interval between engines starting. And then during the hot fire, when you get to T0, now the core stage is going to be going through a series of tests. So the first thing will be similar to a launch. The engines will throttle up, in this case, up to 109%, which is full power for the SLS vehicle. And then during the 8 minutes, there are three major tests. They all involve the hydraulic system and how the hydraulics and the engines and other stage systems interact. They all involve moving the engines around. So the first one will start about 60 seconds after T0. They're going to do something called a TVC check, which stands for thrust vector control. They're going to move the engines in little circles, and because the stage is being held down, the motions of them have to cancel each other out, because you don't want to be twisting the stage in the stand or pushing it one way or the other and loading one side of the hold downs more than the other. So all four engines will be moving. And the idea is to put a hydraulic load on the hydraulic system and watch how the different stage systems interact. So you have the engines running, which are driven by the hydraulics. Now the engines, part of the engine exhaust, specifically on the hydrogen side, is tapped off to both keep the tanks pressurized and also to drive the hydraulic system. So you have this kind of an interrelationship between the two. The APUs start on ground helium, but as the engines start and come up to pressure, though the exhaust pressure will bypass the ground helium, and the engines will essentially be keeping the hydraulic systems running. So what they want to see is, if they drive the engines at a high rate of speed, how do the hydraulics keep up with that, and how do the engines continue to feed the pressurization of the tanks? And the idea is that as the tanks have to be pressurized to maintain their structural integrity, and so as the engines are emptying the tanks, the space at the top of the tanks has to be kept pressurized. And the engines are filling the tanks with gaseous oxygen and gaseous hydrogen, respectively. So um, the idea behind this first check to do it early is they get this first check early. Um, so they will get to see the engines. The engines will be throttled down slightly in the check. They'll be throttled between 95% and 109% during that first check. And the idea behind putting that check early was because this is such a large rocket stage and it requires a lot of all of these different commodities. You have nitrogen, which is purging the forward skirt, the inner tank, the engine section to reduce flammability issues that you might have in those sections. There's helium that's used, uh, um, on the ground side, but then also in the vehicle. You also have a lot of water that has to be that deluge and that sound suppression that has to be running. If there's an issue, with any of the ground supplies, they wanted to know how long they needed to run the engines before they could say, if there's no issues with the stage, but we had to stop the test early. 2 minutes is about that minimum time. Um, and obviously they'll have to look and see what happens, but they fully intend to go for the full 8 minutes. And so after that first TVC check, there's been a long frequency response test that'll start about 2.5 minutes after T0, and that will also be moving the engines around more in back and forth motions, and they're obviously going to be doing low frequency movements and then high frequency movements, and that'll go on for about 2 minutes. And the idea there is to see how the stage responds, that the structure of the stage responds when you're um, you know when you're moving the engines in kind of a back and forth manner. Is it responding as the dynamic structural models predict? And so after the frequency response test, that gets you to around 4.5 minutes into the 8-minute firing. For the next few minutes, um, the engines will pretty much be running in a steady state. This will give them some steady state data, and then they will run the TVC check again. They'll throttle the engines back to 85%, and they will run that same TVC check again. This time, this will give them another data set with the tanks at a much lower level. In fact, they're almost empty. Um, you'll also get a different you'll get a data set with the engines at a slightly lower throttle setting, and so they'll again see the interactions between the pressurization system, the engine exhaust, and the hydraulics, and um, then the last test would be a low level cutoff. They're planning on letting the stage run all the way down to the low level cutoff sensors. They have, as we said in the story, the the, the nominal thing for the cutoff sensors, which they wouldn't necessarily use. Typically, if the vehicle's flying nominally, there's a reserve of propellant in the tanks, and so it'll fly to a guidance cutoff. But if you're running to low-level sensors, once those sensors are uncovered, then there's a timer that's kicked off, and once the timer runs out, then you shut the engines down. And for this test, though, they're going to run a second timer just in case, since this is the first time the system's ever been run. And so if that timer expires and the engines are still running, then they would also shut down. And so those are the main parts of the test, and that will generate a lot of data for them to take a look at. And the idea is basically the reason that it's called the green run is it's not development testing and not development verification. It's really verifying the design and validating existing models. And the idea is to learn as much as they can before they commit the vehicle to a first launch. And this will be the first time. This will be the first time that a core stage has ever been loaded with propellant in test case 7, the wet dress, and then the hot fire will be the first time a core stage has ever been fired. And so the reason that they kept this test last year, after thinking about it again, was this will give them an opportunity to learn something. So you definitely Artemis 1 requires the core stage to basically fully perform for that launch. And so if you're going to learn something, it's better to learn it in the test stand than on the first launch. They'll of course be learning probably in both situations, but this test will give them an opportunity to learn something on the ground before they fly, and hopefully it will provide all the data that they need. Once they finish these tests, they'll do some refurbishment. They'll take the stage out of the stand. They'll put it on the Pegasus barge and ship it to the Kennedy Space Center, where they'll get going for launch processing. So and in the meantime, well, let me back up. So test case 5, they were planning on doing the readiness review for that. I think in this past week, if that was passed, they were going to proceed into test case 5. That's a dry, so to speak, hydraulic and engine checkout. And so all of the test cases up till now have been building. They build in an incremental fashion until they get to the tanking and the hot fire. And so after they finish the hydraulic checkout, they're expecting to get an update to the software for both the flight software, the flight computers, which is a NASA development, and then the stage controller is Boeing software and computers. And they're supposed to do that update before they do the test case 6, which is going to be a dry run through of the procedures for the wet dress and the hot fire. And then once they finish test case 6, then they will be getting ready. They'll start closing the vehicle out for the first propellant loading and the hot fire. And so, we're still hearing that the hot fire, they could get to the hot fire sometime in October. It's probably closer to the end of the month if everything goes well. But the wet dress is going to be critical to getting to that, because obviously this is also the first time that the stage has ever been fueled. This will give them a look at all of the plumbing at cryogenic conditions, and so if they find anything in that, then they may have to take some time to address that. But they are, they've been asked about this quite a bit, and so they're pretty confident that all these seals are leak tight, and they just finished an ambient temperature leak test, and so they're fairly confident going into the wet dress that they've done what they can going into that. So the schedule, because there's still so much uncertainty about exactly when those tests will occur, that's the critical path for the Artemis 1 launch. And so you still have this uncertainty about when the core stage is going to get to Florida, which is driven by when the hot fire is successfully completed. So all of the hardware. So last week in the show, there was a piece showing the penultimate piece of the rocket, the launch vehicle stage adapter was finally delivered to Kennedy Space Center, and so all of the hardware for the Artemis 1 launch is at Kennedy with, you know, a few. There's some things like the secondary payloads for the CubeSats that will fly that may arrive there. They'll probably still get there. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know when they're going to get there, but they'll obviously arrive when they're needed. But that's farther downstream in the schedule. So what's going on at the Cape right now? NASA just provided a couple of pictures and a little feature on Orion. What they've done is the spacecraft has been basically kind of it's been basically waiting, and they're going to have to resync the schedules for once they have a better idea about the core stage schedule after the hot fire. But what they did here is this is in the Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building at Kennedy Space Center, and what you see in the foreground is that the silvery tape covered crew module and the service module underneath it have been mated with the spacecraft adapter cone. There's still obviously a lot of connections that they need to do, but this is one of those installations that they were holding off on doing, and so they're starting to get back into processing Orion and being ready when the core stage schedule becomes more clear. And so, as you can see from in this picture, there's still quite a bit of closeouts that they need to do. So they obviously still have to do closeouts on the connection between the service module and the spacecraft adapter cone at the bottom there. But they also have not installed the solar array wings yet. And you can also see around the Orion up at the top, there's the forward bay cover was removed, and then the outer panels on the outside of the crew module adapter that sits between the crew module and the service module, or and the European service module, have been removed for access. And so all of that work will need to those. One of the reasons that they have the forward bay cover up at the top off is there are some tanks that need to be pressurized, and those have time limits on them. And so they're going to wait, obviously, until they have a better idea about schedule. And there are uprighting bags at the top of the capsule after splashdown. Those inflate to keep obviously the name upright. It's called the crew module uprighting system, and so those tanks will be pressurized closer to when they button up the spacecraft to go into the full offline launch processing. So after they get the solar arrays attached, after they start pressurizing the propellant, some of the propellant system tanks and the uprighting system tanks, they can close out the crew module adapter outer panels, the forward bay cover, and then they will be putting on the service module fairings will go on in the ONC building, and then at that point the spacecraft is still being processed by the prime contractor Lockheed Martin, and they will hand over the spacecraft and take it over to the multi-processing payload or multi-payload processing facility, and that's where all of the fluid commodities and propellant will be loaded, and then the spacecraft will be taken over to the launch abort system facility for integration with the launch abort system, obviously, and that's where the launch abort system is both the abort rocket, the tractor rocket that sits on top of the Orion, but it also includes the aerodynamic launch fairings for the crew module. And so those are those ogive panels that go around the outside of the crew module. So that's what's ahead for Orion getting ready. And for the some of the other work that's going on at Kennedy is they're continuing to process the SLS booster motor segments in the RPSF, in the rotation and processing building. That train of with the 10 segments, motor segments, arrived at Kennedy in June, and they take the two aft segments out because there's a lot more work to be done on those, and you can see this in this time lapse here. This is, I believe, this is the first one, which is the right aft segment. They take those out and they put those in build-up stands, and then they attach the full nozzle extension and the aft skirt to them, and then they bring in the center segments and the forward segment, and those they really don't do as much work on. They do some grain inspections. They stick them on a pallet, and then they really just they put them in storage. And there are two surge buildings that are separate from this building, and so they're continuing to offload segments. Although at this point they're probably pretty close to having all of the segments offloaded from the rail cars, set up on pallets, and put in storage until they're needed. So the boosters are stacked obviously from the bottom to the top, and so the aft segments need to be processed first. But you can see in this time lapse, I believe that was the right segment, the right aft segment, and then this was the left one, and yeah, and so you could see the. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
Philip. No. I was going to jump in because there's a ton of people that were asking some questions over the entire thing. I was going to ask really quickly. Did you design SLS yourself?
No.
Like,
no.
You seem to know everything there is to know about SLS. I don't. It's sort of this thing we don't hear much about, and people are like, "Oh, SLS, oh, this, that, the other." But there's so much going on to get this rocket launched that I've just been sitting here listening to everything that you're explaining, thinking, God, I didn't even know that all this was going on in the background. The test stands, the core stage, the booster processing, like all the different things that have to come together. So that was an awful lot of stuff. Do you mind if we get some questions real quick?
Sure. No problem.
All right. And Jack, you hop in too if you have any comments on this.
I just wanted to. There was
go.
some shots of the test stand we were looking at earlier, and the steam coming out of the test stand when the engine was firing was like the steam was rotating. Is that a thing that happens on the test stands, Philip? Are you aware of that, or my eyes?
It's probably just it's the way that the flame buckets are, the shape of the flame buckets. I believe.
Got it.
Get some sort of toroidal motion. I don't know. I made the vortex flow.
Sounded
anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
We just used some terms that were close. Let me grab a couple of the questions that came through here. And again, there's tons of good questions. Here is one. Destructor, what are the SRB looking thingies on the right of the test stand photo? So that was over here. I can bring that one back up real quick. So there's it's one test stand that has two test positions, I guess.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Right. So the B2 positions, the one that we've been talking about, is on the left, and the B1 position is a. If you were showing.
Did I get that
video
right?
You were showing video from the A1 position, which is a single position, single engine test stand. So those white they're tanks, and so you see the same thing in the A1 and the A2 test stand. So for the engine test stands, all you've got is the engine, and so the test stand has to stand in for all the rest of the rocket. And
The
so
rest
those
of the structure and stuff.
Those are hydrogen and oxygen propellant tanks. And so you have all of the other things that the rocket engine, in this case, so that the B1 test position is used by Aerojet Rocketdyne, and they acceptance test. And so this would be, I don't know if they call it green run, but it's the RS-68 engines that are being retired with the Delta IV vehicle over the next several years. But as those engines final assembly of those engines, just like with the RS-25 engines that the core stage and SLS use. Final assembly of the RS-68 engines is done at Stennis, and when they finish integrating those engines, they're taken over to the B1 test stand and test fired. And in fact, I believe I was told that a couple of tests have occurred with the core stage in the on the other side.
Right.
I don't know if again those were probably during during this period when the coronavirus was when the Space Center was at it was stage 4. So, but those would be interesting pictures actually to see.
Yeah. I guess we
Um,
were sort of looking at it in the way that these are just tanks, you were saying, right? Those are just
right, but I
tanks.
mean it's
They look like SRBs, but they're not actually
yeah,
firing SRBs into that test stand. Those are just
right.
propellant
They're just
oxidizer
right.
tanks.
They're just side by side instead of stacking them one on top of the other. Like the test stand's not going
Yeah,
anywhere.
because over
So
here you'd have,
right,
one
that
tank and
thing.
another tank, and the engine's
Right,
down
you've
on the
got the
bottom.
oxygen tank on top and the hydrogen
Yeah.
tank on the bottom.
And this is just 2 next to each other. Gotcha. Let me see if we can
Right.
grab one more question here because we had so many questions, and we have everything you need to know about SLS now. We have that on video. Let's see. I'm just going to try to grab one. This is a good one. Dougal asks, are there any preliminary dates for the green run tests? So do we know what they're shooting for? When to
Well,
start looking for that?
let's see. I'm trying to think how to say this. So, I talked with the last time I've talked with Boeing was at the end of June, and at the time they were shooting to do the wet dress around the end of September, and then the hot fire obviously would be success oriented. But assuming everything was relatively they didn't have a lot of work to do after the wet dress except just review the data, then they would go into the hot fire in the middle of October. Since then, what we're hearing is we're kind of hearing most people talk about just the hot fire test. And so those dates that we're hearing kind of a range of, October, which could be anywhere in there, end of October, like Halloween, and
Right.
then, maybe early November, somewhere in there. So what's going to happen is NASA's going to post something when as they finish these preparatory test cases. So they just finished test case 4. They put something out. I think really they'll have a much better idea about the schedule after test case 6.
Right.
So the one of the things that we were waiting to hear about was the software drops. So you've got the flight computers in the core stage are up in the forward skirt. The computer boxes themselves are fine, but they're
Right. They're
going
already
to do a
installed, ready to
software
go.
update. But there's an update. The software for the core stage for the flight computers is called for the uh, launch. It's called not a very creative. It's called flight computer application software. There's a fork, so to speak, of that software called Green Run application software, which is what's loaded on the computers right now.
Gotcha.
And so the difference between them two is the stage is not going anywhere. So instead of a guidance, navigation, and control routine running to keep the stage going where you want it to go, there's a green run manager that basically runs through some of the tests that I talk about. Point the engines this way, throttle them this way,
Right. Right.
and so um, that there's an update for that, and then there's an update for the stage controller software, and that's those are like you'd see in a they're computer racks that
Sure.
it
Sure.
just looks like a bunch of
Like
nondescript
server
computer
racks
racks.
sort of thing
Yeah,
or whatever. Gotcha.
yeah,
But the long and short of it is dates that we're looking at are sort of October, November range, right?
right. And so
Gotcha. That
again,
we know
for
so far.
those of you that are watching or that are interested, look for the wet dress date, and hopefully we'll get some video out of that. But they really need to complete the wet dress. They need to make sure the vehicles leak tight. They need to make sure the software is working correctly. They're So test case 6 is a dry run of that. So they're gonna take the software update. They're gonna do a dry run. Then they're gonna load the vehicle for the first time. And if you remember from the shuttle days, they used to have issues with hydrogen, especially first time they load a vehicle with hydrogen. So as I mentioned before, we've asked them about that a bunch. So they just are like, well, that's the next big thing. So if they get through the wet dress clean, then the hot fire could come up probably inside of 2 weeks after that. Now,
Right.
obviously, if they have issues, then but the next big milestone is going to be the wet dress rehearsal.
Gotcha. I think we are ready to move on to the next thing here. Looking at the rest of the time we have about 20 minutes left in the show, and we still have a couple more topics to talk about. Philip, thank you so much for the in-depth. We don't do a lot of SLS stuff on here, so that's sort of our in-depth update on what's going on with SLS as it sort of marches towards the green run and all that implies, right? But that is
Right.
definitely a lot of good information there.
Can I venture
Sure, Jack.
just a really quick
Yeah.
thought? There's constantly this entire time as we've been listening to Philip's incredibly informative discussion about SLS, I've just been seeing people in chat nonstop, predictably hating on SLS, and
hmm
you can feel however way you want about it. I feel like you can feel multiple ways at once about it, and I just want to be 100% clear that rockets are good, spaceflight is good, anything that gets us progressing into orbit is good. Obviously, personally, I am not a fan of wasteful spending, but I will say that space flight and these sorts of industries are a lot like muscles. If you don't use them, they will atrophy. And so, would you prefer that all of our skills and expertise that grew up around the shuttle atrophied for the last 10 years, or would you prefer that stuff, in a way, was allowed to continue on and keep progressing? So I'm happy
Yeah.
that SLS exists. I'm not happy it's taken so long or cost so much, but I'm happy it exists and I think it's a cool rocket. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to throw some positivity for SLS in there because I think it deserves a little bit less hate than it gets.
Yeah, Jack, I can close it out real quick. I get this a lot too, and I like seeing rockets fly. I like seeing lots of rockets fly, but the biggest comment for me, and this is a opinion, we need a big thing on the screen that says opinion. I don't want our ability to get into space to be in the hands of any one company or nation, right? I don't want it
Yeah,
to be all
totally.
Russia. I don't want it to be all SpaceX. I don't want it to be all China. I don't want it to just be one place. I don't want it to be
And
one
even and,
company.
and you said an important word there too, company. I mean,
Yeah,
SLS is a NASA rocket. It's made by Boeing, but it's a NASA rocket. It's not made by a private company. I don't
yeah.
know about you, but I'm a fan of dystopian films, and I know all about what happens when one company controls everything. So
Yeah, I wasn't gonna go
You-
there, but I really just having multiple
let's
options,
see.
having multiple heavy lift big vehicles in all sorts of different phases of development. Think what you will, but I like seeing rockets fly, and I do hope everything that's gone into it. I hope that I get to see an SLS launch at some point. I mean, I want to see the green run because 4 of those RS-25 engines firing up at the same time is sort of insane. I'd love to see that, but I like rockets. Let's leave it at that. Speaking of rockets. The next thing we've got coming up here is going to be the launch schedule coming up really quick. Before then, let me get us caught up on some super chats that came in. So we'll pop back over this way. Roberto Twins, I appreciate the support there. Thank you very much. There's some questions in here. I'm going to go ahead and skip through. Dog, thank you as well. We had Kaziki. Kaziki, thank you for the membership. I think there was some Capcoms in there. Modern, thank you as well for the membership. And then Matthew Jones, SLS is awesome. Orange Rocket, good. There you go, Matthew Jones. Thank you so much for all the great coverage of all of spaceflight. That is something that we try to do. We're not just one channel or another channel. Oh, people are only positive about this, so that's all we're going to cover. It's across the board. We try to cover lots of different things. So thank you for the kind words there and the support. But Jack, tell us what's going on with the launch schedule. What do we have to look forward this coming week in launches?
yep, we got 2 launches in the coming week. We've got a Ariane 5 out of Kourou.
Just sort of just cough it out like I said your words there. Kuru, I think it is.
Yeah, so we got an Ariane 5 that's carrying the Northrop Grumman mission extension vehicle and the BSAT for, I think, Japan. And then we've also got the Falcon 9 launching a Starlink mission out of Cape Canaveral SLC 40. So the Ariane 5 is on the 15th of August. The Falcon 9 is on the 18th of August, and that's what we're looking at coming up in the next week in
Gotcha. That
spaceflight.
the Ariel launch has been plagued by some weather problems. What was going on there? I know it's been delayed quite a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. I remember we were even streaming one of the launch attempts for it,
That's
right? And
right. Yeah,
it
we were
scrubbed right at
live.
the last second. I forget what that was. If it was a wind thing or something with the vehicle itself. I really didn't do my research. Whoops.
Yeah, gotcha. Alrighty. But that's what's coming up. Not a lot of launches, of course. I'm not sure if we're gonna try to stream the Ariane space launch, but I imagine for SpaceX Falcon 9 down out of the Cape, Chris Gebhardt will be taking the live stream setup out there and getting us a live stream of that to cover what's going on with Starlink. But those are your two launches that are coming up this week. Of course, last but certainly not least, I'm gonna just charge right into this because we always do.
Really quick.
Go ahead.
That graphic
Sure.
is wrong. It should say Slick 40, not 39A. Just a note.
Oh, it says 39A and it should say Slick 40.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right. So just a miscalculation on the graphic there. But we do need to take the last 15 minutes of the show here to talk about everybody's favorite shiny silver rocket, Starship. Because we know that there's tons of stuff happening every single day down at Boca Chica. I mean, compare the infrastructure for these test stands we're looking at for SLS with what we see down at Boca Chica and sort of the insight we have down there. Jack, run us through really quickly what we've been seeing out at Boca Chica, and I'll start bringing up some of these pictures and stuff like that so we can say what's going on with Starship.
Yeah. So, man, it's like the days start to blur together. I'm trying to
They do.
remember what a week ago was. It's already been a week since the hop, right? It's been, it's been a good chunk of time since the hop. They
Yep.
have moved SN5 back to the production site, which is the first time we've seen that happen, which was kind of a hoot to see happen, especially because I don't think we've seen a Starship transported with a nose cube on it yet, the mass simulator up top.
Right.
So that was interesting. Um, they moved SN6 down to the launch site and they lifted it up, put it on the mount, and the launch mount has the thrust simulator installed, so that's indicative of SN6 getting some cryo-proof testing. So
And
they
we
will
sat
fill it
there for
up.
the lift too. That was the big test you were talking about, the SN6 lift.
Yeah, that was the stream we did the morning after I stayed up all night, and I think we were a little bit short on hosts, so
A little bit, yeah.
it was basically just me rambling, sleep deprived, delirious for
There was something
like
about
6
your
hours.
cats in there or something. I mean, it's like all sorts of information was
Yeah, it turned into a
conveyed on
cooking
that
show. At
stream.
one point, I was like
A
making
cooking
peanut butter
show?
toast, and yeah, it was like a whole thing. So yeah, give that a watch if you're listening to me slowly go insane.
I'll link it up in chat.
Yeah, but that was a good stream, and especially thanks to Mary for that one. That was all her idea, and I honestly liked it. It was a fun thing to do. Hopefully, I didn't come off as just an insane person. But yeah, so
Jack, we always come
see
across as
SN6
insane people. Like
Well,
that's
you
what we
know,
always come across as.
standard amount of insane. It's not any additional insanity. But yeah, so that's you can see SN6 is getting lifted up there. There is no Raptor installed on SN6 yet. To get the thrust simulator under there and do the cryoproof, they need a no Raptor in the way. So
Right.
no Raptor installed yet. We're not sure which serial number Raptor it's going to get, but presumably not serial number 27, the one that just flew on SN5. And so yeah, there's some activity going on at the super heavy pad.
Yeah.
We've
What are
got
these things? These are like huge pipes.
Yeah, I don't know if those are like if the appropriate term would be casings or what.
Casings?
But I've seen people say maybe they're forms, like the sort of thing
Like pour something
you pour
into?
concrete into and then you remove it. And then I've seen other people saying they're not gonna. How would they remove that? So I'm not a structural engineer. I don't know, but it certainly looks to me. A lot of people speculating that it's going to be a water tower type structure going up. It looks to me like sort of a six-legged version of the tripod that they have at McGregor. So if you
Yeah,
don't know the tripod
I
test
don't think I have a
stand, that's
picture of that here, do I?
no worries.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So yeah, I think it sure looks like a launch mount to me, but again, what do I know? And the renders that we've seen from SpaceX do have a large, structure. And
Yeah,
I
here
think
we
the
go.
flame diverter was supposed to be actively cooled. So if that is a water pipe in the center there, that I guess they would have to provide water to an actively cooled flame diverter one way or another. But um, I've also seen people saying, in our Discord, that's not a water pipe, that's a form or something that they'll hang the forms off of to pour the concrete. But
Yeah.
that right there that we're looking at is basically on the fence right there. It is labeled as the
It
Starship
says.
Super Heavy Orbital Launch Pad. So I label it as the orbital launch pad. And yeah, ultimately, it sure looks like it's going to end up being something along those lines. And that's where the booster will sit. And
I
that's
mean,
where
I'm not going to draw 31 Raptors in there or anything like that, but you get the point. This is sort of sketching in what this thing may look like. The big debate, like you were saying, being, is it going to be a water tower or is it going to be a launch pad? I mean, it could be a water tower and it's still the orbital launch pad, and the water tower is just closer to the road and the launch pad's further away. We've seen the aerial photos sort of looking down with the concrete forms and stuff like that. I mean, what's your gut, Jack? The things that they've put in there with the pipe in the middle and the concrete form, the rebar on the sides. What's your gut feel on that? What do you think it's going to be?
I mean, surely they will need a water tower at some point for the massive amounts of water they'll need for sound suppression and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I remain unconvinced that that's a water tower. And
Right.
if it is a water tower, why go through all the trouble to build a water tower when you have Starhopper right there? I mean, I know it's the old joke that Starhopper could be made into a water tower, but it sure seems like it could, and it's just sitting right there, like just out of frame in this image. So um, I remain unconvinced that it's a water tower. If we see any evidence whatsoever in a concrete fashion that it is a water tower, believe me, I'll be the first person to admit that I was wrong or incorrectly labeling things. But yeah, so far, either part of the launch mount or part of the entire launch structure. I mean, I feel like it's safe to call it launch pad construction, because whether it's the water tower, whether it's a crane, or whether it's the actual pad itself, or all three integrated into a single structure, it's all part of the super heavy launch pad. So
Yeah.
um,
I got
chat
an
is yelling
idea.
at you for slacking and only drawing so many engines.
You know what my idea is?
What?
SN5H2O. What if they used one of the other tanks they built as the water tower out there?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying with Starhopper. That's been the running gag this entire time. So
Yep. Oh, geez. Well, what other videos do we have to do here? Because I know we've got. I can't find the place to put my pen on the desk here. The legs. We had all that crazy video of the legs, didn't we?
yeah, that was really cool. That was in the 6 lift video, I think, right?
Yeah.
Not the stream, but the video.
I mean, you can see in here, I'm going to do some more telestration as I am apt to do. This is sort of the leg structure in here, and you can see the workers sort of folding it up, but there's sort of landing pad on the bottom, and you can almost see with those different size holes in there. This, I'm going to guess here, Jack, this almost looks like some sort of slip system, right?
Yep.
Where you
Yeah, it
have
sure looks like it can compact. Go ahead.
Yep, an outer sleeve and then an inner sleeve like that, and if you push on the bottom, it actually slides into the other thing to absorb some of the impact of landing or leveling the vehicle. It doesn't look like an active leveling or anything like that. It just looks like, okay, this leg touches first, so it needs to give a little. You don't want the whole thing to just rigidly transmit the force to the rest of the rocket. You need to actually gather a little bit of the energy there, but it definitely looks like some sort of slip system, and we've seen the workers actually folding these things up like with a come along or like a ratchet strap where they're folding them up, haven't we?
Yeah, so that it looks like they were doing some testing on them, ahead of putting it on the mount. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, these are so, like with anything SpaceX, naming is a hoot. So the legs on SN5, I think, are being referred to, at least by the community, as version like 1.0 legs.
Mm-hmm.
And Elon, I think, has tweeted that they're already going to do a new design of legs, but this design is different than the 1.0 design, but not the new design that Elon has mentioned. So I think these are just basically a tweaked version of the legs that are on SN5. I think I've seen some people refer to them as 1.1 legs, but I don't
Right.
know if these are 1.1s or if we've just seen the 1.1s at the launch site. I'm unclear if these are the bigger ones or what, but the difference between the version 1.1 legs and the 1.0 legs is just the 1.1s are bigger, and chat is saying that these are 1.1.
But it's not an official name from SpaceX. It's just like the community
No.
name, right?
Exactly, yeah, and these again are not the final leg design. Just an iteration on the current leg design that we've already seen. So, but really interesting to see them get ratchet strapped up, and then they would sort of let them down, and then let them
Yep.
sort of swing free, and then ratchet strap them up again. That was a really great catch by Mary there.
I mean, you can actually see the ratchet strap there, and they're using that. It must be connected to something up in here, and they're actually pulling those legs up. It's not a big hydraulic system or anything like gearing or anything like that. It's literally workers with a ratchet strap. You can see the green ratchet strap in the middle. They're sort of looped around some of the leg structure. So,
Yep. Yeah,
I
and it looks like
mean,
they're gravity operated. I mean, they release
yep.
them and they just kind of swing freely. So I think in flight you kind of swing down, latch into place, and that's that. I mean, you have telestration. I have extremely detailed hand movements. So
It goes like
we
this.
get by with very advanced simulations here at NASA Spaceflight.
Oh, the other thing, I'm just sort of running through the last of the things we have here is the thrust simulator, because we saw that on the test stand right now, right?
Yep.
But talk
Sure
to us about
enough.
the thrust simulator here. I'll draw it. It's this.
Draw some big arms on it, like
Yeah,
a
maybe put
flamethrower.
a beefy arm. Yes. Maybe,
So
give it one of them beefy arms on the side. And anyways, it doesn't actually have a beefy arm. The strong bad reference. But what's the
the
thrust simulator for? Why is it in the middle there?
So the vehicle in flight experiences forces from the engine pushing up on the common or the aft dome there where the engines are mounted. So normally in flight, engines pushing up, that has an effect on the vehicle in the form of stresses and whatnot. So in order to make sure that those forces aren't going to cause a catastrophic um, um, oh my god,
Failure.
Right.
Catastrophic something that you don't like.
Catastrophic failure in flight. Thank you. They do this test. They fill it up with a cryogenic liquid and basically treat it like a giant steel balloon, and have that thrust simulator on there push on the underside in the same manner that the Raptors would be pushing, in order to see if the balloon pops. So, yeah, that is what the thrust simulator is for, and it's pretty nifty. They have iterated on the design of its mount to where it used to take them quite a bit of time to put it in, take it out, put it in, take it out. The installation process was a little bit time consuming, and now with this new mount that they've built since the SN4 detonation, or SN4 adjacent detonation, I like to be precise with that one. It wasn't SN4. They ever since they rebuilt the mount there, it seems like they designed it so that they can rapidly do these sorts of pressure tests. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's just 3 hydraulic rams. They push up on the underside of the aft dome there, and yeah, that's what that's for.
My drawing was
Hopefully,
simplified. My drawing was simplified.
yeah, it's all right. We still love you. So yeah, basically what we're looking for now is they'll do a cryo test with this. They'll put liquid nitrogen in it, and they'll push on it. And if everything goes fine, they'll put a Raptor on it, and then SN6 will hop like SN5. And
Yeah,
then there you
it's
can
a
see
way of
SN5.
exerting some force on the tank when it's under cryo pressure without actually lighting the engine is what you're testing
Exactly.
with the ram, the hydraulic ram there, the thrust simulator.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
really quickly, we got a couple to run through really quickly, then see if we can answer some questions. Which ones are these? This is SN5 back from the test stand because it's got the
Yep.
thrust simulator hat on top. And what's next to it?
The mass simulator hat. Yeah, and then the on the right, we don't know yet. I don't think, but I think it's a pretty safe guess that it's SN8 on the right there. Actual
It
mass.
says
Yeah.
actual mass, yeah.
Oh yeah, because everyone always likes to say it's not simulating mass; it actually has mass, and it's like, yeah, but it's simulating mass. All right, anyways. And so that's
whatever.
SN8. And yeah, and so we're super excited to see SN8 start to take shape, and there's some minor differences that we can already tell on SN8 based on that hatch that you can see, that sort
The
of
oval
hole at
hatch?
the top of SN8.
It
Yeah,
almost looks like one of those Band-Aid
to
hatches, like
Yeah.
little Band-Aids, not the big long square
like the
rectangular
finger,
Band-Aid.
the one you put on your finger, right?
Yeah, the little Band-Aid. Yeah, it looks like the same sort of shape.
Yeah. So so yeah, that's SN8, and it'll be really interesting to see that thing come together at the same time as whatever they're going to end up doing with SN5. I mean,
Whatever they're going to end up doing with all these nose cones.
yeah, that too. Hey, maybe they'll just make a water tower out of nose cones, like some kind of weird Chihuly type like sculpture.
Out of nose cones?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're going to
So, yeah.
build a building out of these nose cones or something at some
It
point.
looks like they've got some polishing compound on that one on the right, and they're going to get it all nice and shiny.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's also a 5-ring stack kind of hidden back there, or a 4-ring stack, I forget, with reinforcements on it, and we haven't really seen that yet. So a lot of people are speculating that that reinforced stack is going to be, yeah, right there, is going to be part of a nose cone for SN8. And we had previously been thinking that the nose cone, the tall one, the fully built one that's in the windbreak right there, was going to be for SN8. But at this point, everything's kind of up in the air. We don't know what's going to be used for what. Some people have pointed out that SN8, or the tall nose cone in the windbreak right there on the left, doesn't have a header tank weld, which means
Right.
there is no smaller propellant tank up in the nose for mass distribution that we think would be necessary for the belly flop and landing maneuver. So one of the things we're looking out for is another one of those nose cones, because several of those nose cones that we're looking at right now do have that weld. However, that fully stacked one does not. So the next thing we would probably be looking for in nose cone land is a nose cone with a header weld stacked onto that reinforced 4 or 5 ring stack, which I forget if it was 4 or 5.
Yeah,
Yeah,
1,
it's
2, 3, 4,
nose
5. There's
nose
5 on that one.
Nose coneopolis. I don't know, whatever you want
Nose
to call it.
coneopolis. I mean, maybe they're constructing residences for SpaceX employees or something. They're just gonna line these things up down a row. It's like a vertical airstream, 2 stories high, whatever. I don't know.
It's like
I just made that up.
like a wacky space yurt.
It's for the resort. It's a wacky stainless steel space yurt. I like it.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyways, let me see if we can grab a couple of questions here. We didn't really have a schedule for this show. We just sort of like talked about stuff, as you may have noticed. This is a Raptor cam shot, isn't it? Yeah, this is a Raptor cam shot. So it's crazy everything that's going on out there. This used to be the biggest building, the windbreak. You can sort of see on the side here. This used to be this big, massive building out at Boca Chica, and this puppy, the high bay, is rising in the background. We think it's going to go probably another 50% taller than it already is. If I did the math correctly there. Is that right? I think I got it right, right?
Taller?
Yeah, because you take half of that, then you stack it on top of that, would give you 7. How many sections is it supposed to be tall?
I thought 4 or 5, but now they're doing a half section, so I'm unclear.
Something like that. It's going to be taller than it is. It's not even its final form. Let's put it that way, shall we? It's not even its final form. Let me grab a couple questions and see if we can't speed run, and we'll go a couple minutes over because we've just been running our mouths here the entire episode.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh no, Philip. You know something, Philip? I'm going to do a super chat right here. This is from Jared, and Jared says, "I love covering different new topics each week and covering topics many places neglect. We're a news organization. We're not just here to tell you the news that makes us popular. We want to cover all sorts of spaceflight news and cover all sorts of different things that are going on. So it's fantastic. When I say that, I mean we all sort of just drone on. We just talk about this, that, and the other because we're fans of this. You know what I mean? So not a bad thing at all that we can sit here and fill up an hour and a half with conversations about just miscellaneous and sundry spaceflight topics, So anyways, let me see here if I can grab a couple questions. Here's one from Dougal. Dougal asked, any speculation on how tall the super heavy launch pad might be? And let's speed run these if we can.
I've seen some people speculating like 20 meters. Or 12 to 20 meters is what I've seen speculated on the forums and on our Discord. I don't know. I'm not a mathometer, so I can't like measure the angles and do all this stuff. So I don't know, but some number of meters more than 10 and potentially less than 40.
Just dial it right into a really narrow range there for us. We appreciate it, Jack.
Yeah, I got you.
I saw some people were doing the math on, if the angle is this and the sine, cosine, and it's like, then it's going to converge here if it needs to be this diameter at the top. And I'm like, let's just let it get built and we'll see how big it is. That's sort of how I go about these things. But it's always fun to speculate. Another question.
Yeah, I understand wanting to know too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's roadside rocket science. We're like observing stuff and making guesses. It's a cool pastime. How many or have any more Raptors been spotted on site for SN6? Is SN6 supposed to get 3, or do we know on SN6? Any official commentary on that?
I think S is getting 1 and 8 or 9, whichever the next one. I think 8 is getting 3 based on an Elon tweet. Right? Before he responded to somebody with a render with the 3-engine SN8, and he said impressive. So he didn't say yes, but he also didn't say no. So I think SN8 is going to get 3 engines, and I think
SN6 with 1.
I think SN6 will stick with 1, and I don't 100% remember, but I feel like we saw a Raptor get delivered when SN5 already had its Raptor. So I would bet money that there's additional Raptors sitting
Like
around.
lurking around somewhere.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
very
So I
clever
think as,
girl out there at Boca Chica. Like you see the one
well, I
here,
think
and there's
as,
two raptors on either side of you.
well, I think as soon as they're ready, I think as soon as they're ready, they'll throw a Raptor on SN6 as soon as it gets cryo approved. And I'm just going to completely blow past your Jurassic Park reference.
I appreciate the dress. It was on the TV the other day, so it was a timely reference for me here. Let me see again. Let's speed run some questions. I know we talked a lot, and what are the small hot dog tanks on the outside of SN5? I can grab that really quickly. We have those COPVs, the black, and now on SN6 we see some blue wrapping on the outsides of them. Those are carbon overwrapped pressure vessels, COPVs, that hold various gases that are important for the operation of the spaceship. Helium and nitrogen a lot of the times, right, Jack? I think helium and nitrogen primarily out there.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are COPVs, carbon overwrapped pressure vessels, are what
Composite.
the hot dog composite. Thank you, composite overwrapped pressure vessels, not carbon overwrapped. Is this some sort of carbon on it though?
I mean,
It's something.
carbon fiber is a composite, right?
Is a composite, yes. So I was close to being correct. Composite. Thank you.
You're probably technically correct, but anyways, moving on.
We'll just roll with it. Are the design of the SM8 flaps final? Grez, I don't know that we know that any design is final until we actually see it fly. And even if we see it fly, we know it's not final because that's just how SpaceX operates out there. This iterative design process, every time they put something together, even the way that it's connected together, the welds that they use, that sort of stuff, it's all in flux. So I don't think we see anything out at Boca Chica that you could say is going to be final. I think it probably looks about the same, but there's going to be some sort of changes to whatever they build. Here we go. With all these starships piling up at Boca Chica, is the Raptor engine production keeping up? So we were just talking about, have we seen new Raptors come in? We know the Raptor van sort of scoots around down there, but I imagine it's going to be hard for them to move Raptors around without Mary getting her eyes on it, right?
Yeah, it'll be really exciting if they follow the same flow that they have in the past. They're going to have to truck a Raptor down to the launch site, basically on a forklift, is how they've done it in the past. So hopefully we'll get some good views of that happening if and when it does.
Yeah, and again, y'all, I'm just speed running some here. GI Joss, I've seen a fence or wall being constructed around the Boca Chica launch facility. Is it to block video and observers? How will it affect us? We've seen a little section of wall, but the eventual structures are going to be so tall, they're not going to block everything. Maybe they'll block some detailed ground operations. But that wall hasn't been completed. We're not sure if that's something to protect something, erosion control, keeping dust from blowing into certain parts of the site. We'll continue to watch what's going on with that wall. But we don't think that the walls would ever be able to block everything you could see from the facility, right? So
yeah,
we'll keep an eye on those. Go ahead, Jeff.
We're not gonna throw a drone up in the air. That's illegal.
Yeah, that's illegal there.
You know, we're not gonna do anything they don't want us to do. We are good neighbors. So
yep,
that's the thought there. And
yeah.
if the wall goes up, so be it. We will adapt, and our coverage will continue one way or another. And like you're saying, everything that's going to get built there is so huge anyways. Even all these rockets are so massive. You got to figure they're building the launch site at the same time as they're building the production facility at the same time as they're building the rockets. So things are going to change. And we can't be scared of change, because then we'd just be scared all the time.
That we would be scared all the time, because they're constantly changing stuff on us out there, aren't they? Folks, there's still more questions in the queue. There's always more questions in the queue. We never get to all the questions, as you know, but we have gone 7 minutes over right now, and we probably need to be wrapping up this week's episode 19 of NASA Spaceflight Live. Again, I do apologize. There's always so many questions. It takes you about 10 seconds to type out a question, and it takes us 5 minutes to talk about the questions, because that's just sort of how we go. So we never get to all the questions, but we do appreciate you. If you do continue to have questions, you can always send them out on Twitter. Tag at NASASpaceflight over on Twitter, or tag some of the hosts if you got questions on. Oh, Philip, you don't have a Twitter, do you? You are not on Twitter. You write articles, don't you?
That's right.
So if you have questions about SLS, you could probably tag NASA Spaceflight, and I bet you would get an Absolutely. All right. And you would get like an 8,000 word article answering your question about SLS. Just look for it on the NASA Spaceflight official website, because that's how Philip rolls. Also, if you have the ability here, you can click follow on the channel. You know how to subscribe to it. You know how to make sure that you get back to it, ring the bell, etc., etc. We also have a Discord if you're, I think, red team or higher. But no, if you're Capcom or higher. We need a Capcom. Yeah, we need a chart that we can display on the screen at some point for this.
Yeah, that'd be
But
nice.
it would be nice because I always forget. If you're Capcom or higher, you can hop over to the Discord where people are always chatting about whatever's going on. We've got some behind the scenes stuff for members that get posted, previews of videos and things like that. And we just chat back there sometimes. So if you're Capcom or higher on the YouTube membership here, you can chat over in the Discord. Don't ask me how to get connected. We need a graphic for that too. What else did I miss? I'll roll out the super chats. Brendan Gleason, thank you so much. Brendan said, somebody buy Philip a beer for his SLS knowledge. So there you go, Philip. get a beer for all the SLS knowledge. We appreciate you, Brendan. And we've got Nick Houston, another super entertaining show. You guys are the highlight of my week. Keep it up. Appreciate you there, Nick Houston, for the $20 super chat. We've got Heather saying thank you, Philip, as well. Another super chat specifically saying thank you to Philip. So good job, Philip, for the first appearance on the show. You definitely dropped the knowledge payload on us, I guess we could say, when it comes to SLS. We're getting caught up on SLS coverage is what we're doing.
All right, good.
Jala J, thank you for the super chat. And then Per Wilner, thank you so much joining Pad right there. We appreciate the support there as well. Over on my side, Tay and 20, thank you too for the support over on my side. But I think that got us all caught up here. So as you know, at the end of every show, we always thank our supporters. We're getting to the point where I can't even read all of these names. Check this out. Launch directors and flight engineers. We're up to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like 13 or 14 flight engineers. There is the highest level of memberships. And then launch directors. Yeah, that list is long. Everybody in the launch directors list there. Thank you all so much for the support. This week's episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. Where is my scene? Is this my scene? Yeah, this is my scene. Your crew, your cast for this week's NSF Live. I'm your host, John Galloway. If you watch me over on Twitch, you may know me as DOS. Our subject matter experts today, apparently we've got Jack Beyer in there, Philip Sloss, and then that third person who, I guess I got the wrong version of this graphic, but what you gonna do? Visuals, Jack Beyer and Brady Keniston. Thank you all so much for getting all of our visuals and stuff like that together. And then production on the back end, Michael Baylor with all of our scenes and overlays and stuff, and Ian Atkinson putting together a lot of the links for us that we talk about during the course of. Wait, what? I'm trying to end the show here. You can't just do
$50 super chat. We got a
You can't
$50
just-
super.
I'm literally
I'm
trying to end the
sorry.
show.
I'm sorry. We got a $50 super chat. Thank you, SL Quinn. Holy cow, $50 is a lot of money.
I'm doing the outro. There's like a moratorium on super chats so that we can actually end this at some point.
I'm sorry.
The
I'm sorry.
$50
It was
outro.
$50.
It's a
The
$50
$50
outro.
outro.
We've got families to go back to and stuff here. SL Quinn, thank you so much for the super generous outro super chat there. We really do appreciate the support. Once again, on my sides here, Jack Beyer over here on this side, photographer, video editor, live stream host extraordinaire, wearing all sorts of different hats for NASA Spaceflight. You can see his information up there at the Jack Beyer over on Twitter. Jack, thank you so much for everything you do to bring all these different coverages, videos, and everything to people. We really appreciate it, dude.
No sweat.
Alrighty, and over on my other side here, Philip Sloss making his first appearance on NASA Spaceflight Live, the purveyor of significant SLS knowledge. Philip, thank you so much. Fantastic job today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good deal. And you can find Philip on NASASpaceflight.com articles, especially if they're about SLS. Can I say it that way? Don't have a Twitter, but we'll see you in the articles, right?
Right.
And I'm your host, John Galloway. Like I said, if you're watching over on Twitch, you may know me as DOS, but NASA doesn't issue press credentials to people with made-up names. So I have to use my real name here. They're like, who is DOS? DOS Valdez? Did you get this out of a Cracker Jack box? And they just don't approve your credentials, so my actual name's John. Hi. Anyways, that's NASA's... Go ahead.
Really quick
What?
before I forget,
Sure.
Philip, you were the first person from NASA Spaceflight that I ever met, and my first piece of launch or space swag that I have is a business card from you, which I do count, by the way. So thank you for being cool to me.
It's a Vandenberg card, right?
Yep. So thanks for being cool to me my first time out at Vandenberg. I was super nervous, and you and Jay both made me feel at home. So thanks, dude. Hopefully we'll have you on many more
Yeah, I hope we get to
NASA
hope to
spaceflight
see you
lives.
out at Vandenberg again sometime.
Oh,
Well, I'm not even
yeah.
gonna get my hopes up for that. That's not even a thing anymore.
It'll
I'm
hear
kidding.
you.
I'm kidding.
It'll hear you.
Hopefully
Don't say
soon.
anything.
There's supposed to be a Delta out there.
Anyways,
Hey, last but not least here, check this out. Today's episode was brought to you by Orange Rocket Good over in the NASA Spaceflight
Oh
shop.
man.
I feel like I have to do this. Over in the NASA Spaceflight shop, if you are a believer, if you like big rockets and you cannot lie, there is a shirt for you. We've got this Orange Rocket Good t-shirt over in the shop. You will be one of the very few number of people. You wear a shirt like this in public, people know you're not afraid of anything. So I'll link this up in chat over here. Of course, there's all sorts of other stuff over on the shop, the
Oh,
Texas
boy.
Tank Watchers hats. Oh, since the last time we did put in the Boca Chica Sunrise poster, we had that framed print from Mary out at Boca Chica in there, but it was a little bit pricey because it was an actual framed print. We've added in a poster that doesn't have the wood framing around it. It's sort of a rolled up poster sort of thing. So if you're looking for one of those sunrise prints, there is now a poster form factor on that. I'll put a link to the shop over here in the chat like that, and in the other chat like this. That's hilarious. You must have one, an Orange Rocket Good shirt. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Anyways, folks, we are at like 15 minutes over, so that's going to be the end of NASA Spaceflight Live this week. Thank you so much for all the support. Thank you so much for letting me do this. Jack, Philip, thank you so much for joining me here today, and we will see you nerds later. Be looking for us later this week. Every day we got videos from Boca Chica, and we've got that Starlink launch coming up. Should have a live feed from Cape Canaveral, not Boca Chica on that one, but appreciate everybody always showing up, and we will see you nerds later. Propulsion continues to be normal.
The chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic. Flight downside speed off. Speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.